I want to start off this video series with a motivating example. Here on the screen, as you can see, I've got PowerPoint open. PowerPoint is a tool that many of us educators use to generate slides for lectures or lesson videos such as this one. One of the reasons why we like to use PowerPoint is because it makes it easy for us to combine a wide variety of multimedia content. In fact, if you looked at the slide right now, you'll notice that I've got 3 different items on it. I have this text box here, so I can type in the text box. I have this shape that I've drawn directly to PowerPoint. And I have this image here. Now, I didn't draw the image, but it was provided by a file, and I was able to load that file, and then PowerPoint, drew that image for me. Now, suppose you're working at a software company, and you're tasked with creating an application like PowerPoint. I mean, that's crazy, right? Because you're just a lowly 1110 programmer. And look, man, there's a lot of stuff going on with PowerPoint, right? There's buttons, there's menus. I mean, this would take you years, right? Well, but remember what we've been teaching you all semester long. If you're a professional software developer, you are not working on code by yourself. You are working with other people. So there are other people on your team who are tasked with things like the buttons and the menus. Let's suppose you're just a lowly intern and you've been tasked with something very, very simple, like say, given a slide, draw all of the contents of the slide to the screen. Oh, simple. I mean, it's still graphics. I mean, how do we do that? Well, I mean, we've done graphics already, right? I mean, in assignment 4, we had this turtle and we gave the turtle commands and the turtle would draw for us on the screen. You might say, well, but that's because we didn't actually write the turtle, right? The turtle was this class that, well, I as the instructor provided for you. Well, yes, and let's assume that's what's happening here as well. So the idea here is that what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our application is drawn using classes, and we have all of these object-oriented features. So I've got 3 different classes here. This is a class for a text box. This is a class for a shape. And this is a class for an image. And remember, we're the lowly interns. So just like you all didn't create the turtle, you're not going to create these classes as well. Somebody has created these classes for you. And what they've told you is that each one of these classes has a draw method in it. So if you want to draw something, all you have to do is, well, call the draw method on an object. Oh, but you have to give it something to draw, but we'll just give it a window object, exactly like what we did in the turtle assignment. Oh man, okay, so this task is sounding a lot easier now, right? Because you didn't have to create all these classes. I mean, they were created for you. The only thing that you have to do is draw them to the screen. Oh, no, there's a method for that. So that means that the code is something like what we have above our head right now. The idea is that, well, the slide has some contents, so we access that through some attribute called contents. That contents is the list of objects on the slide. We just loop through all of that, call the draw method, and all right, well, give it the window to draw. Easy, right? And that's true, right? That's because all of the hard work was done inside of the classes. All right, so now with that said, let's talk about, suppose we were a little more advanced programmer in the company. How do we actually design those classes? Because, well, look, those draw methods, even though they all have a draw method, they have to be very, very different. I mean, look, this text box, it has fonts. I hate fonts. I've written a game engine. They are way, way harder than drawing this image here. And in fact, the code that you would do to draw this is very, very different. However, with that said, these objects have a lot of things in common. You'll notice that as I've been clicking on each one of them, that we call this a frame, which surrounds each one of these, and the frame allows me some control over it. I can move the object about, so all of these objects have a position. They also have a size. I can control the frame by dragging on it to control the size. I can also, well, look, they have an angle as well. I can do this to rotate it as well. So it is true that the draw methods of each of these classes is going to be very, very different. But the people writing these classes are also going to have a lot of methods that are going to be in common and are going to have essentially the same code. And that's what our concern is here, right? Because, all right, I have a lot of methods that are essentially the same code, but if I've got 3 different programmers, right? And I probably do have a different person working on the text box than I do on the image, just because fonts are so difficult. But if I've got somebody different working on this class for the text box and this class for the image, well, that means that we're writing the same code for the frame twice. And, well, it's probably different in each class. Well, different code performing the same thing, that's going to make it really, really hard for us to debug if anything goes wrong. I mean, okay, let's suppose we even just had the same programmer for creating the text box and the shape and the image. Well, if all the programmer is doing is essentially writing the method, but then cutting and pasting it in the different classes, well, that's also a problem, because the problem with cutting and pasting is if I have an error once, I have to remember to go fix it in all of the places that I have cut and pasted to. Look, in software development, if we have some sort of feature, we want to write the code once. And that's because if anything goes wrong, we have one place to go to in order to debug it. So how are we going to solve this? Well, the idea is that we have these three classes, right? Once again, for my text box and my shape and my image. And what we want to do is we want to sort of factor out, pull out all of the methods that they have in common and make that its own class, say slide content. And then the idea is that all of the other classes are subclasses of that original class. To see what I mean, well, let's go look at a module here. So I'm going to open up Atom Editor. And as you can see, I have this class called slide content. Now, this is really just sort of the stub of a class definition. I don't even have proper specifications here, but that's because I'm just trying to illustrate a concept for right now. Now, slide content is, well, the stuff that is in common, right? It's all of the things that, say, the text box and the shape and the image could do. In particular, if I were to try to create some slide content, well, all of them have to have a position that they're located on the screen, as well as a width and height that defines their size. I want to be able to draw the frame, right? Those are those little handlebars that I used whenever I wanted to resize the object. Oh, and notice that the handlebars only showed up when I clicked on the object. So I also want to have something for selecting an object. And now we have the person working on those difficult fonts who's doing the text box. And you'll notice, okay, well, I need to have a draw method for the text box because, well, text is drawn in a very different way than everything else. Oh, and the initializer for a text box, well, it needs to have some text to draw. But you'll notice that I don't have any methods here for selecting or drawing a frame. And why is that? Well, it's because of this thing right here. You notice that I don't actually have the word object inside of parentheses. I mean, this is something we've sort of been not saying too much about in the class definition. It kind of looked like a parameter, but it's not a parameter. Indeed, that's what we're talking about now. By putting something other than the word object in the parentheses, I'm saying that the text box is a subclass of slide content. And what does that mean? That means that any object of this class has access not just to these methods, but also all of the methods of slide content as well. So if we scroll down, I've got another class for image. Image has a very different draw method. You draw images very differently than you do with text, but it's also a subclass of slide content, so it gets access to all of these methods as well. So that means that I only needed to create the method to draw frame once, and both the text box and the image got to use it. So in fact, this is often what happens in, complex software development. You'll have one person who's working on sort of the shared content, say the slide content here, and then you have specialists who are working on, say, the text box or the image, but they're not rewriting all the code. They're only adding the additional features that are unique to that new class. Now, I know a lot of this sounds very, very abstract right now. And that's because, look, I'm just really trying to motivate what it is that we're going to try to do in this video series. We're going to spend this entire video series talking about subclasses and how they work. But this is a very important motivation to remember, because this process of, okay, somebody has written a class for me, and all I'm doing is adding additional features to it, is a core concept when we're trying to make fancy graphical applications like PowerPoint. And while you all won't necessarily be making PowerPoint at the end of the semester, you are going to be making a computer game. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this video series is going to give us the underlying principles that we're going to need in order to write software like that.